Now in this lesson I want to quickly talk about the various ways you can select and modify colors inside Photoshop. Now the first thing I want to point out here, and I pointed this out earlier in this course, is the foreground and background color swatches right down here at the bottom of the toolbars you can see. Now by default these are set to black and white, with black being the foreground and white being the background color. And you can make these the default in a couple of ways. You can actually click this small icon right above it and it will make those colors default, or you can press the letter D on your keyboard. Will also bring up the default colors. To change the colors of either one of these swatches, you simply click directly on the swatch and it will open up the color picker. And you can see right now we've got the color picker for the foreground color right here. And the way you search out and find colors is you've got this giant field that represents all the various shades of this particular color. You change the color by moving this slider up and down the color bar here. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to get a green color. Well, I'd move it over to where the green area is, and I can move my mouse around. And you'll notice up here in this little preview, we've got the current foreground color, which is black. And then we've got the new color, which is one we're selecting in here. So no matter where I drag this, it'll show me what that color is right inside here. And now there's a couple of icons right next to here that indicate a couple of things. This first one being this with this little exclamation point here indicates that this is an out of gamut color, meaning that my printer may not be able to achieve this vibrancy of this color. So by clicking right on that, what it's going to do is jump to a color that will that my printer will be able to print. Now the one beneath it is your web safe palette. So if I'm searching for colors that I know will look good on the web, you simply click that and it will jump to the color that will probably look the best on the web. So that's how you navigate through your color, all the various colors, and able to select the various shades of them. Now this color picker is going to be universal throughout Photoshop, no matter what you're in, whether it be layer styles or any other adjustments or anything like that. When you're accessing the color picker, this is always how it will look. Now, some other aspects to this color picker is you can input specific RGB settings, CMYK settings as well, or LAB, or hue, saturation, and brightness values. But the settings that you're looking at right now are going to be the most commonly used. We leave this on the hue, and that allows us to access all of the various colors. You can see the various changes it makes if I select individual ones here. You've got your RGB settings as well, but by leaving it on hue, you can actually get the most accurate color. And if you need to input specific numbers or even specific web codes for colors, you can input those right inside here. Now another aspect of the color picker is right here you've got the color libraries. If I click on that, this is where you would access your various Pantone libraries. If you have very specific Pantone codes for stuff you're printing, here's where you would access that. And you can scroll through and find the various codes, or if you know a specific code, you can simply input it by inputting the number and it will jump right to that. Then you would simply go back to, or click OK, and you can see that that color now is residing in your foreground swatch. Now, another way of modifying and selecting colors is here in the color panel, which if you go into the window menu and you notice it's open now, but if it wasn't, you'd simply go into the window menu and choose color. And I'm just going to drag this out so you can see what's going on here. You can see at the bottom here we've got that same color bar that was in the color picker, just a smaller version of it. And if I drag my mouse over it while I'm clicking and holding, it'll select those various areas of color. And you can modify them and tweak them a little bit simply by moving these sliders around, just like that. And you'll notice that it corresponds in the foreground color swatch here. So, adding those and mixing the colors, and you can change these sliders as well. If you wanted to perhaps work with CMYK sliders, you can certainly choose that. Grayscale sliders, it gives you a straight white to black gray bar there, and you can choose that various colors there. Now another way of selecting colors is, one of my favorite ways actually, is using the swatches panel here, which is just a collection of various color swatches that you can choose from. Just by clicking directly on it, you can see that it does in fact load it into the foreground swatch. If you wanted to load it into the background color swatch, you would simply add the command key or the control key and click on that specific swatch, and there you have it. Now these swatches are built into Photoshop and they're the default set, but if you found that you wanted to save specific colors to the swatches panel, you can do that in a number of ways. Like for instance, if I have this color panel open, if I've mixed up a color, let's say I've got my RGB sliders and all this is looking good, I can take that and drag right over to my color swatches panel, and notice when I go outside of an area that doesn't have any color, it turns into a little bucket. And my currently set color, which is that green right there, if I go in here and click right in that area, it'll ask me if I want to name it. Let's just call it Green 1. And I click OK. It adds that swatch to my swatches panel. So I can certainly add it that way. Another way is, of course, going down here to the new swatches panel. So let's say I want to make this yellow color. I'm just going to flip this around. If you click this little bent arrow, it'll actually flip the foreground and background color swatches around. And you saw if I just clicked in here and dragged, I could do that, but you can also click the new icon here and it will automatically bring that foreground color right into your swatches panel and it's all ready to go. The beauty is, if it's a specific color, when you are always working in Photoshop, it will always have these colors available. And if you've generated a set of colors, you can certainly go in here and go to Save Swatches and save these out as a color set that you can load into another machine, pass them off to another user, and other things like that. Now, another way of selecting colors is by using the eyedropper tool in sampling colors. Now over here, I'm going to jump over and show you this image here, and let's say I've got a number of colors. I'm going to go ahead and set my workspace back to the default. So let's say I'm looking at an image and I like the color of something and I want to sample it and use it in something else. Well, go into the toolbar and you select the eyedropper tool as you see right here. And what this does is sample colors based on the sample size you got up here. Well, if you sample the point size, it's going to sample a very small aspect, basically 1 pixel of your image. Well, if you wanted to get a more evenly spaced variation of the color, I generally use the 5x5 average. So what it does is it takes the 5x5 pixel average of an area and samples the color based on that. So if I drag into my image here and click once, you'll notice that it has sampled that color into my foreground swatch. And again, if I want to save that into my swatches, we'll simply open up the swatches panel and just click right inside there, and we'll call that Red Book. And we've saved that color based on that image. Now that's sampling colors inside of an existing Photoshop image. What if you wanted to sample colors outside of Photoshop, maybe from your desktop or even from a web page perhaps? Well, I have a web page open here in my browser, and let's say on this Kelby training site that I like this green color background. Well, here's what I would need to do. I'm going to go over here and let's minimize my Photoshop window a little bit. I'm just going to resize it in a little bit here. And let's look at this web page. Position that on the side here. If I click on my image here and just not release the mouse, but just click and drag, you'll notice that it's continuously sampling no matter where I drag the mouse. You notice a foreground swatch. If you keep your mouse click and hold and drag outside the document, you'll notice that we go into the browser and it's sampling all those colors inside the browser. So we're sampling that green area, and when I release, now Photoshop has that color sampled, and we can now save that in our swatches panel as a color that we saved from outside of Photoshop. So that's the various ways to access and save colors inside of Photoshop. So I encourage you to practice and go in there and just play with the various color pickers and things and see what kind of mixtures you can come up with, and just get used to where all these settings are when it comes to selecting colors inside Photoshop.